Welcome to Ticker Talk with hosts Max and Kate, podcasting from Treetown in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ticker Talk shares the everyday success stories and science behind the heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness training practiced at CrossFit Treetown. Max and Kate explore the research, science, and practical experiences behind Ticker Training, a program developed by Max for just about everyone, your grandma, your cousin who runs marathons, and you. In this series, we'll explore what exactly heart rate-based functional aerobic fitness is, how what you eat affects how you move and how you feel, what tools to use in tracking progress, and how to fit training into your everyday life. Join us and learn something new to make a healthier you. Pace yourself. We are on. Yes?
Yes.
All right, welcome to Ticker Talk. Max and Kate here.
Welcome.
We are talking this morning about training the classic HIIT or high intensity interval trained.
Boot camp type.
The stuff that you can get on your TV to do at home.
Yeah, high intensity.
Just those like little interval. So that athlete, we are kind of, what I want to look at is what does that athlete look like when they come in here and we put them through kind of our assessment process and what happens within the first 6 weeks of training under Ticker Training.
And we have a specific person that we are going to look at here, yes?
We do. So we got a new member in, and we pulled him in for a first assessment. First assessment tests some baseline strength numbers.
Okay, let's talk about him a little bit first. 45-year-old man.
Yes.
Relatively lean when he came in, 17% body fat approximately.
I think so. We did an in-body body analysis.
Yep. On all of our new members, we do an in-body and we do a PNOE metabolic test. And those are kind of the two things. We also do some strength assessments.
Right.
That we're just going to review quick, right?
Yes. So his in-body showed him to be at 17% body fat. He had, 75 pounds of muscle and about 27 pounds of fat.
And what was his visceral fat?
Visceral fat level of 5.
Okay, and the visceral fat is important. That's essentially fat around your organs.
Yeah.
Potentially your heart as well. Visceral fat, having excess of 10 can just show being susceptible later to chronic disease. Okay, so
on the in-body sheet, maintain a visceral fat level under 10 to stay healthy.
Cool.
So there we go.
Got it. And his was starting at
5.
Okay.
And you looked at the guy and talked to the guy, and he seemed to be, healthy, happy.
Yeah.
He worked out at least 5 days a week.
He did mention today. I just talked with him a little bit today, and he did say he was tired. He was worn out from his traditional HIIT 5 days a week. An hour class. He
has a career and kids and a life and everything else too.
A successful doctor.
Oh.
Dad, husband. Okay.
So.
And his goals are improve his health, feel better, continue to move.
Yeah. Be fit, happy, healthy.
Got it.
So we brought him in for an assessment 1, which.
Okay, hold on. Before we move off this in-body, so we've talked a little bit about where he started.
Okay.
Okay, 6 weeks later. With following our Ticker Training with essentially slowing him down.
Yeah.
Right? Getting him to work at an aerobic pace.
Yep.
Utilizing fat as a fuel source.
Yes.
Okay. He went from what? Pounds of fat?
He went from 28 pounds of body fat to 24 pounds of body fat.
Is that 4 pounds almost?
4 pounds of just body fat off.
Awesome.
His muscle mass started at 75 pounds of muscle and went up to 76.
Super cool.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's talk about his strength assessment real quick.
His visceral fat also went down 1. So he was now at a level 4.
That's pretty awesome because he was reporting to just being tired, overworked when he came. And that visceral fat score can be kind of a little bit of a sign of somebody that's overstressed and overworked. So.
Right. So it's going down.
To see it go down is great.
All right. So we did some initial movement and strength assessments.
We do a few things, test their core and a few other things. But what are we going to highlight today?
We're going to just look at some hard numbers that we have 2 different readings on.
Okay.
So we tested his front squat when he first came in at 125 pounds.
Okay. And it went up to what?
175 pounds.
So he added 50 pounds to his front squat.
Just to his front squat alone.
Cool.
And his press went from 95 pounds up to 117 pounds.
Awesome. Perfect.
So those are two things that really show us. I mean, that's a squat and a press.
Yeah.
He got stronger.
He sure did. Significantly. Cool. All right. So, I mean, we're not going to pretend that part of that is just learning the movements, and
because he was not doing, we can safely say he was not doing CrossFit before
Correct.
Joining CrossFit
Correct.
Tree
He was doing quote unquote strength training as part of his HIIT or his boot camp type stuff.
Right.
All right. So now we've also got some of his Pinoy tests here, his metabolic test. Are we ready to move on, Kate?
We are ready to move on. So
Cool.
we did a Pinoy test, a metabolic test on him.
Yep. And that was back in,
The first,
looks like September 15th
sounds about
on his first one.
right.
Yep. Okay. And let's just real quick, we'll go over this really fast, but he burned 15 or 16% fat during this test, 83% carbohydrates.
Great.
And we'll dive into that a little bit more. And on the second test, 6 weeks later, now keep in mind he's followed our recommendations from this test that kind of gave him some guidance, or at least we slowed him down some because we had to give him,
So
we
two
had to
things.
be creative a little bit with his.
We analyzed his Pinoy test. Let's do it right now. So
Okay.
scroll down to, the results from this test. And I remember doing this test and noting that he jumped out of the gate burning some carbs as a fuel source.
Yep.
And which is not terrible. A lot of people do it. And
Yeah.
it kind of depends on what you eat. And we have not talked to this individual about his diet at all.
Correct.
I mean, we're going to leave that part out of this whole conversation.
Correct. That's our next phase with Mike after we see what he does next.
So we pull him in, and I bring this screen up, and you can see that crossover is really far down on the right-hand side of that graph. He does a lot of work after that graph crosses.
Right, where he is burning essentially only sugar.
So we look at that crossover number, and that's kind of one of the ways, we tell people that here are your numbers, your parameters to work in. We don't want them working on the other side of that crossover.
Correct. Because in his traditional work that he was doing, all of his work was, in this 150 beats range.
Those programs are designed to do small, fast, intense. I mean, that's in their
Correct.
name, efforts. And if you're going to do a small, intense, fast effort, your heart rate's supposed to be high.
It will teach your body to do exactly what we're seeing here.
That's its job.
Yep.
He did great.
He
at that.
did.
I bet he was actually pretty good at it,
I
too.
bet he was very good at it. Yep. At least for a while.
For sure.
Yep.
So we look at this crossover point. We realize that this is at, 110-ish beats?
Yeah, it's at 109.
109 beats.
Yep.
109.5. I'm pretty good.
Okay.
So I understand that he's not going to, knowing his background in terms of what he chose to do for fitness coming up, and also
Correct.
looking at this data, I knew there was no way that we could tell him, go out there and do CrossFit at 110
Right.
beats.
And let's keep in mind, this individual is a fantastic athlete.
He
is-
doesn't have the learning curve newbie where you're going to
Correct.
figure out how to do this.
A little bit of learning CrossFit, but this is somebody that has been moving a lot at a very high pace. So he's not off the couch into CrossFit. He is coming to us with a base of fitness that was just very, very intense.
Now his math, his 180 minus his age, should have been
135.
call it 135 to 140, somewhere in there.
Yep.
He decided to train there.
Because he hears that in class.
Right.
A lot,
So we
right?
cue that all the time. This is a workout that you're going to do at your MAF.
Yep. Which is not a horrible thing out there. If you are not, a member here and you don't have access to this metabolic test, that's a great way to do a lot of your training.
So show us where 135 is on his right hand or left hand. What is he doing at 135?
Yeah, at 135, he is done utilizing fat pretty much.
He's on the downturn of...
Yeah, he's full sugar at 135 beats, which to him in his rate of perceived exertion, this is very easy work for Mike.
Sure.
Or at least it was.
So we kind of gave him these parameters like work. Did we write down what we told him to do? Yes. So we had told him based on the Pinoy test that he needed to train around 125 to 35 as much as possible.
Yep. And we were being kind with that.
And we didn't know him as an athlete either. So we couldn't look at self loops and kind of tell him like, hey, look, on this day you did great, but this day you should have scaled X, Y, or Z.
Right.
So we sent him off on his way.
Yep. It's 6 weeks later.
We get him in for another test.
And
Yep.
I did not look at the first test or look at any of his self loops before doing this test. We just went on like, cool, let's check in.
Right.
So what do we have on the second test? Let's look at this.
Okay. So a couple things that I noticed straight away is the difference in oxygen utilization in this first test.
Oh, yeah.
You can see on this first test right from the start and all throughout the test, keep in mind blue is O2 in, red is CO2 out.
Yeah.
And you can see here right even from the start, he's essentially exhaling the same amount of oxygen he's bringing in.
Yeah.
Okay, and on the second test 6 weeks later, you can start to see larger gaps forming. Still not fantastic, but you can see that he is starting to adapt to our training.
Yeah.
And that he's starting to be able to utilize the oxygen that he is breathing in better. So he's becoming more efficient.
And without hyperanalyzing, we don't usually talk about the chart under there, but you can see where the one on the left looks very chaotic and the one on the right looks a little less chaotic.
A little less chaotic. He's starting to settle in on utilizing fuel a little bit different than here. Because this is just as RER as RQ. It's just an equation that's a representation of, O2 and CO2.
Right. So, moving down to fuel sources and caloric needs.
Yep, and heart rate and the
heart
relationship to all of that.
The first thing I notice is that crossover has moved to the right.
Correct.
Where are we at now?
115 beats.
So,
Maybe even 117.
not significant, but different.
Different. I mean, this was 109, right? 109 is essentially Mike reaching down and tying his shoes. This might be more like tying his other shoe, right?
The thing that I want to highlight on that, though, is not necessarily the specific heart rate, but where it falls on the continuum of time. So these tests were within a minute of each other.
Right.
So if we look at the crossovers, first crossover was way early on, and this other one now is moved much farther down.
And let's keep in mind, this is the same test. This is a ramp-up intensity test on the assault bike.
So he's doing the same amount of work.
Doing the same amount of work in the same time. Everything as far as that goes is the same. And you can see his crossover here is at 235 seconds on his first test. And on his second test, it's over at 350 seconds.
That's
significant.
Yeah.
You can also see here on this second test, he utilizes almost 5, there he does. He hits 5 fat calories per minute. The first test, he tops out at 2.9. Okay. The thing that is significant here that we were looking at was at second 500. He's how fast is he going at 135 beats on his second test?
On his second test at 135 beats, he's going 57 RPMs, and we're at an 8-minute mark.
Okay, and we're at the 8-minute marker for second 500, just so we can. And now I want everybody to take a note here. At second 500, his heart rate is 136 beats on the second test. On the first test at 500 seconds.
So 57 RPMs in the ramp up.
Yep. His heart rate on the first test was 150 beats. How good are you at math?
Good enough to know that the second test, the heart rate's significantly lower.
Yeah, 15
than the
beats,
first
right?
one.
Is my math right? 15 beats, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Not only that, but he utilizes fat all the way up to 117 beats, whereas on the first one, he pretty much stopped at 109. He uses more. So the thing that's significant about this test is how much more work he was doing at 135 beats. What our goal and our hope is for Mike here is for him to be able to train the majority of the time between 135 and 140 and utilize fat. And you can see at 135 beats, 57 RPMs is a pretty good output.
Yeah.
Especially he weighs 160 pounds or so he's not a really big man. So that's fantastic that he's able to turn that kind of RPM on an assault bike at that body weight.
Absolutely.
So it'll be fun as we continue with Mike because he's all in, and I saw him train today, and he sat as close as he could to 135. I mean, we had and below, but we had toes to bars and wall balls today, and he was doing a good job. But it'll be fun to see how the changes in this oxygen utilization happens and how that will translate to being able to move faster yet. So, because Mike's work is not done. he's still got a ways to go to see some major improvements as far as being metabolically efficient. But you can see here from these 2 tests, he is on a really great trend.
I feel like he's really motivating for those people that have done this kind of, all-out effort in however they've chosen to do it.
Correct.
Even CrossFitters.
No
right?
pain, no gain.
Right. So even CrossFitters that really excel at those 7-minute, WODs, I'm going to crush them.
Yep.
And then you look at it like, it is going to be hard to teach your body to slow down. And we can see kind of how hard it is that you're not used to it.
He spent 3 years doing that.
But he's motivating to see with time and dedication, you actually can.
Yeah. And it's only taking him 6 weeks.
This is what he's done in 6 weeks.
So, it'll be really fun to watch Mike change and make some changes in his ability to utilize fat and oxygen. And we'll be checking in with Mike often. And we just wanted to make sure we shared this with everybody because this is very, very important for Mike feeling better. He's
he
reporting.
Feels good. He's happy.
Yeah,
he's a great member to be around. He's very motivated to keep coming, and he's here every day.
He's reporting feeling better. It'll be fun when we get his system survey after a few more weeks and see if that's changed as well.
And I would love to sit down with him and figure out, let's look at how he's fueling his workouts. Let's see how his diet has changed in terms of when you make yourself more aerobic, what you want.
Correct.
What
how
you
craves
choose,
and
what you want to fuel yourself with.
We'll check in on all of that. So
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Thanks, Kate.
Weird quietness while we turn it off.
It won't turn off.
You have to get it from
I'm on
it. Blooper reel.
It's not it doesn't want us to stop podcasting.
You have to go over there.
I'm over here.
Oh.
It doesn't want us to stop.
Oh.